thank you for joining me. If you're a returning visitor, well done, go you. I'm glad the content is interesting for you. If you're new to the channel, then I must remind you or inform you that it's unlikely that any of the videos that I put up in regard to numerology are going to make a lot of sense. And this is because nothing in numerology can be read as a standalone. And what I'm doing with this channel on this playlist is basically delivering an online tutorial. So I've tried to organise it in a step-by-step method or approach. And so if you're starting with the numerology content on this particular video, by all means watch it, but I really doubt that it's going to make a lot of sense. You might want to at least go back to part 1 of this series. If not, go back to the ruling number content, but definitely I would familiarise yourself before we go on with the next series after this, which will be pyramids, but we'll talk about that in a little while. Anyway, for now though, where am I going to go with this? Basically, just a reminder to people that I do put chapters in to help you out so that you can jump from one topic to another within a video. And this is about being flexible to your own learning style. So the chapters are there for your convenience. Plus the fact, I really think I need to remind people that there's a wheel nut on YouTube. And if a video is going too slow, you can actually speed it up and make it go double speed. Or if, for example, a person is struggling with my Australian accent, they can actually slow the video down in different places just by using that wheel nut. I think it's on the top right hand of the screen. And if you do find the content useful, may I ask you please, kindly, if you could write a comment in the video description stuff down the bottom of the video, if I can remember correctly. Lost my capacity to speak my own native tongue this morning. Anyway, moving on. Yes, if you could please leave a comment, that would be wonderful. If you haven't subscribed, that would be wonderful too. If you want to see the new content as it's loaded, just click the bell to get notified. I'll try not to spam you out and harass you. Anyway, without further ado, let's crack on and get into the content for today. So in the event that you skipped a little bit, the title of the video where it says that this is actually part 4, I'll remind you, this is part 4 in the series of the arrows, and we've only got one more part left to go, which is part 5, of course, duh. Anyway, what I've done is with this slide here, I have outlined what arrows are on what video, just to make it a little bit easier for you. So you can see we've made progress. We've talked about what a birth chart with no arrows looks like, what it means. We've talked about the arrow of determination and intellect. Same thing. Obviously, I use examples of people's birthdays, to apply it to their lives. We've looked at the frustrations, the inquirer, and hypersensitivity. What I have found is that the arrows of frustrations and hypersensitivity tend to be quite a prominent theme through the 1900s. For example, I've seen frustrations come up again and again. I've got them with my cousins. My mother has got an arrow of hypersensitivity, just things like that. There again, I'm trying to remember, I think when it comes to the arrows which are on part 3 of the series, poor memory, disorder and planning and that, I think I saw that coming out in the later part of the 1900s, the 20th century. Today, of course, we're going to be talking about the arrows of activity, passivity and procrastination. And then next week, so I've highlighted it with the fonts so you can see very clearly here. Next week, we're going to be taking a look at the arrows of spirituality, emotional balance and practicality. And that's fairly interesting, well, from where I sit, because I love numerology anyway. But anyway, let's talk about the arrow of activity now. So interestingly, where the arrow of activity is concerned, it's when a person has got at least 1 9, 1 8 and 1 7 on the birth chart. Now, I think the question mark here is, should we call it activity or hyperactivity? Because the 7 is combined with the experience of ambition and responsibility. Look, and either way, people with this arrow, they're very expressive in the way they approach their lives, and if their freedom of expression is restricted due to social and environmental concerns, they can develop anxiety type conditions and disorders because this nervous energy becomes suppressed, so they can become agitated. Now, health impacts of this is it can often lead to things such as asthma, headaches, and heart and circulatory problems. The key, I guess, guidance for people with this arrow. So, parents, this is something for you to remember as you raise these little people, is that they have this inherent need, not just a desire, a need for peace and harmony. Arguments, noisy environments can become particularly distressing for them, and it can foster and induce illness, shall we say. They need to spend a lot of time in nature in order to restore this sense of personal calm. And they tend to have a preference for living outside of the urban environment. It's way too busy for them. They will enjoy walking in the bush, gardening, and outdoor sporting activities. And as I said before, children with the arrow really love and thrive in a harmonious family environment. Of course, this is the same for all children, but I think if we neglect to provide that for these children, these are the ones that will grow up and end up having anxiety type disorders. And these little people, as well as the adults, would probably be the happiest they can be on camping trips or bush treks or whatever, where they can sleep and eat and play outside. What I find very interesting is that Nelson Mandela also has not just the arrow of hyperactivity, he has the arrow of frustrations, which of course we covered in one of the previous videos. What that would indicate to me is that explains a lot of how he came to his inner peace, because of course he had his wings clipped. He was deprived of this harmony in nature and being able to connect with the land, but he spent a lot of time, I believe, incarcerated and in solitude, and he would have had a lot of time for internal reflection and to find the peace within and to release expectations upon other people. Obviously, his life was rife with disappointment anyway, but it certainly gave him what he needed to be to become the leader of influence that he became, I guess. As for Albert Einstein, he's a very interesting character. I think if anybody knows terribly much about him, hyperactive actually would be applicable to him. Especially, I don't know if there's any recordings around these days of the gentleman when he was talking or mobile, but certainly, yeah, he was a fascinating person. So when it comes to the arrow of passivity, this is a really interesting number in as far as, first of all, where the arrow of activity has the numbers 9, 8, and 7, the arrow of passivity doesn't have a 9, 8, or 7 on the birth chart. And it generally reflects that the people with this arrow, they're going to be the thinkers and the planners, but they're not necessarily going to achieve any greatness unless they learn how to persevere. And this won't be something that they fall into. By that I mean, if we have a moment of reflection, it's not like a light bulb is going to go off in the head saying, oh, I need to learn how to persevere. It's going to be more a case of that they'll have some kind of influential person in their life that will be pushing them, certainly through their childhood years, to persevere and not to give up too soon. They contribute to the world as a group of people that think and see beyond situations such as wars and human turmoil. And of course, there's been a lot of that over the past centuries. Passivity within this context doesn't reflect a lack of action. It just reflects a natural desire to live peacefully and balanced and harmoniously in coexistence with one another. From my perspective of interpreting the meaning of this, I think the negativity or the negative aspect of this particular combination is that if there isn't or if there is a lack of harmony, then the person will be inclined to withdraw and not engage and not reach their fulfillment, because they certainly can achieve a lot. So then once they withdraw from the world, if you like, then it can manifest as laziness to others. I just need to think about this a bit more. It's not necessarily that they are lazy, by the way. I had a bit of a think and I'm back. It's more that other people would perceive them as being lazy because they don't understand that the person with the arrow of passivity has to learn from their experiences. So basically, what we would do if we had children with the arrow of passivity, we would have to teach them to incorporate physical activity as part of their daily routine and to instill in their development the types of habits that will be beneficial to them for the long term. There's a lot of pressure on parents for any of our children, and this is one of the arrows where the parents actually, and life doesn't always allow parents to do this, so I recognise this in advance, but it would be best for the child that its parents support them and work with them actively and to use loving encouragement. And this might mean that because they don't necessarily gravitate towards doing sport. There may be poor motor skills or something like that. And it would be the kind of parent that just insists that the child gets up and goes out and does some sporting activity and then encourages them with loving words as opposed to like, oh my goodness me, you're so useless, you dropped the ball again. It would be things like, oh, you're getting better, well, you're improving, as opposed to the negative type stuff. You would be encouraging them to spend time outdoors with nature as well, because this is going to benefit them over the life path as well, because it teaches them to ground and connect to the earth and to get out of their head. And this is all part of having them achieve an emotional balance. Now, I did put on here the only person that I could find that was an achiever, shall we say, which, I mean, look at the year the guy was born anyway. Galileo Galilei, if that's how you pronounce his name, famous scientist. Do your research on him. He's the only person that I was able to find who has achieved success that has got the arrow of passivity. So presumably in the time that he lived, he must have been in his head all the time. He's pretty incredible. I'm going to leave you to look at that yourself rather than drag this video out. So the arrow of procrastination is where there's an absence of the numbers 1, 5 and 9 on the birth chart. And I must admit that this is probably the arrow that I'm looking at today that I find to be the most interesting and fascinating, because we're only going to see this really in this century, the 21st century. So any suggestions or comments that we have about the implications of this arrow is pretty well based on theory around the numbers, but the reality of it will reveal itself, how it influences a person in the life path. We're going to see this over the next decades. Certainly, I don't think any of the information I give you right now will be 100% reliable, but the arrow of procrastination is going to be far more prominent throughout the century and even throughout the next millennia, the next 1,000 years. Okay, so when we take a look at the chart here with this arrow on it, we see in the first instance that the arrow of procrastination actually divides the birth chart into two components. And one of the components is the intuitive aspects and the other one is the practical. So we've got intuitive and analytical versus practical stuff. Now, procrastination, of course, is the delaying of things. It's thinking. It will prevent actions not being taken, perhaps abandoned completely. I think we all know actually what procrastination is, and that it can just be self-sabotage in a lot of ways, because we know what needs to be done, but we just don't go and do it because it all looks too hard. Now, or because we figure we'll do it later or whatever. It's just a really bad habit to fall into. So the advice here is that with parents, it can be corrected with young children, but if we allow the children to continue to procrastinate and defer throughout their childhood, it can become a huge barrier in adulthood. It can prevent them, as I said before, from achieving very much throughout their lives, and it can add to frustrations that they experience, and not only for themselves but also for the people that they associate with. I would actually even go as far as saying that if a person procrastinates, there can be a compromise of integrity there, because we all know we all know, without judgment, we all can procrastinate, okay? Most of us have enough self-discipline to at least pull our socks up and get on with it, especially if other people are waiting on results from us for whatever it is they need. If we've got somebody that procrastinates to the extreme, they will invariably let us down and disappoint us. So we learn not to rely on them. So this is why I say I believe that actually the error of procrastination is a real risk to a person's integrity unless they learn to stand up and face their responsibilities and all of this kind of thing. So perhaps one of the things we can be doing is teaching our young people that are born in the 21st century how to take responsibility for their actions, their commitments, follow through on their obligations and tasks, and also to be accountable for not achieving what it is that other people need from them. So when I say not achieving, there's not this, you must be the most perfect person in the world. No, none of that. It's just if you promise somebody that you're going to do something, then it's on you to actually ensure that you, excuse me, I need a cough, I think. No, I think I'm all right until I finish the slide. Yeah, it's on the person. If you say to somebody that you're going to do something, it's not good enough to turn around and go, oh, yeah, I meant to. Look, give me another 3 months and I'll get it done, especially if they're relying on it. So, parents, there is a good chance that if you've had a child between the years of 2000 and, say, 2008, that you've got an arrow of procrastination in your family, and so you've got a responsibility to teach your children both patience and persistence and to complete a task or a project before they start a new one. Multitasking is probably not a good idea for people that have got the arrow of procrastination. They may struggle with it. So in order to keep the video short, I'm going to say love you, leave you. Before I do though, I'm going to ask you actually another special request. If you're a parent of a child, or if you do, because anybody that's born between 2000 and 2008 may well actually be an adult now. So if you're an adult and you've got an arrow of procrastination on your chart, or if you're a parent of a child with an arrow of procrastination, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. So please do leave a comment. Anyway, back to it. I'm going to love you, leave you, catch you on the next video. So thank you for being with me. Have a blessed week. Take care. Bye-bye for now.